Hi, I'm Sam, and I'm here today to share my CPS story. And this is a little different for me, and I think you might get a lot out of it. So please press that like button, and if you haven't already, subscribed. First, let me say I've shared my story for the past 3 years on TikTok. I have transitioned over here to YouTube, and in doing so, which has been about a month now, I have done a lot of self-reflecting because I'm able to literally actually see my transformation. Last week, I watched the very first video I ever made, ever posted. It was the first time I ever spoke what I was going through. And that was February 2023 was when I first overcame the fear and stepped out of my comfort zone to share my CPS story. And actually, I remember what it was that pushed me over the edge finally to do it, to be vulnerable, to step out of my comfort zone, because God had placed it on my heart 6 months previously to share my story, but I was scared. And the line that I heard that was the final green light for me was actually by a content creator named Jessica Kent. And when I heard her say, "Everything you want is on the other side of fear." I've probably have heard that before, but for whatever reason that day, that clicked in my head, and I grabbed my phone. I could see what my camera was, and I pressed record and started talking. And then you got to go through the whole push the button to post fears. But I first did all that February 2023. And so coming to YouTube, I feel like I need to share my story. That makes sense, sharing my CPS story. But it has felt weird to me because I'm not the person I was when I shared my story on TikTok. When I share my story on that platform, I'm newly traumatized from CPS and the termination of my parental rights. I'm newly grieving the fact that I'm never going to see my kids again, that I will never be a part of their childhood, that I don't get to raise them. So when I share and have shared the past 3 years, it was from a place of such pain and trauma. And I kept pushing forward. I kept moving, I kept waking up every day with a positive attitude. I stayed committed to my healing journey. I knew the importance of self-care. I do walk with God and have a relationship with God. I do want to be a better person for my children, even though I don't get to raise them. So all of those things kept me moving forward. And so as I, am here now currently new to YouTube, and I am going to share my story with you, but I felt like I owed my audience here that traumatized, sorrow-filled person that I used to be. If you've had your children removed or rights taken, you know that place that I'm talking about. And if you're a mother who hasn't dealt with CPS or the removal of your children for whatever reason, this community, the reason why your kids are not with you isn't important. What's important in this community is that mothers are healing, because it's possible and because you definitely deserve it. So, and all that and the self-reflection, it's been rewarding to see my growth. And I hope that my journey can become a spark of hope or an inspiration to any mother who might be grieving and trying to heal from ambiguous loss. It's been a very, very heavy, overwhelming experience, but I've learned a lot along the way, and I am a better person. I'm a stronger woman. I'm a wiser soul. So I'm glad you're here. If you haven't pressed the like button, please do so. It gets my channel out to the world, and I don't want one single mother in this world in isolation, grieving alone, suffering, thinking healing's not possible. I want every mother to know who is grieving because someone else is raising her child for whatever reason. I want every mother to know that healing is possible.
Limitless, yeah.
I had never had any interactions with CPS, any experience. I was never part of the system or knew anyone who ever was. So when an investigator started knocking on my door 16 times in a 6-month period, this was all new to me. I was like most people, oh, come on in, I have nothing to hide. That never backfired. Each investigation was closed and no services needed. Well, about the 5th time I asked the investigator, isn't this harassment? I think I asked the 6th time they came out, and no one ever helped me. My ex knew that if he kept calling, I would get flagged as high risk, and he was hoping that if he kept calling, that I'd eventually get jammed up. CPS removes children unlawfully every day in every county, and they can twist something innocent, like if your uncle's over or aunt, but they went to prison 15 years ago, oh, they're a felon, they shouldn't be around children, that's a violation, will unlawfully remove your children. I mean, CPS does this all the time, and he knew that. Well, my removal was our 2nd day at the homeless shelter. Now, I chose to go to this family-centered homeless shelter. I didn't go there out of desperation. I went there for resources. Under my circumstances, I was doing what was best for my children. I needed a daycare assistance, housing assistance, and help finding a job. I have a college degree. I have no problem working. I just left my abusive ex and needed to get on my feet. CPS saw a vulnerable mother and used that against her. They never offered me assistance. They never offered me any kind of support to prevent removal. They barged in the 2nd day at the shelter and removed my 3-year-old and 18-month-old from my arms. And they had removed my 1st grader and my kindergartner from their elementary school that day. That was my first night without my children, and my children's first night without me since they were born. I figured everything would be cleared up the next day in court. This had to be a big misunderstanding, and that was inaccurate. What CPS does in every case is they create a false narrative. So when I went to court the next day, the CPS attorney described to the judge a mother. It wasn't me, but she told the judge it was. In the CPS courtroom, no evidence is required, so that's the story that stuck. I got labeled a bad mom. They placed my children with my abusive ex and gave me a case plan. They closed my case 7 months in, which I now know is unlawful and against policy, but this time in my life, I didn't know my rights. I didn't speak up for myself. I was very naive. At 7 months, it ended with me having no rights except for supervised visitation once a week. But then Dad's new girlfriend said twice a week, so that's what we went with. I never understood that either. The system failed me and my children. A parent's life literally becomes a living nightmare. And best interest of the child, that term gets thrown around a lot by CPS and the social workers. Where I live, it's Family First Network, and in the dependency court. Love that term, but I promise you with everything inside of me that the child welfare system and their corrupt courts do not give a shit about the best interest of the child. So I completed everything in my case plan except for acquiring my own housing. That took me over 2 years to do. So my children are with my abusive ex for over 2 years, almost 3 years. I strongly feel that if a parent shows up to every court hearing and every visitation, that termination of parental rights should be taken off the table, not even an option. I do not think adoption is a solution to parenting. Well, like I said, it was almost 3 years until I officially completed my case plan because it took me that long to get my own place. I finally achieved independence. I had always been dependent on a man, which is where I failed my children. So the same month that I finished my case plan, my ex committed a series of serious felonies and went on the run, abandoning our children. And DCF came in, scooped my children up, and put them in foster care. I was at the court hearing the next day to let the court know I wanted my children. I felt I was what was best. I had my case plan that I had just completed. But once again, my voice was not heard. Once again, CPS treated me like garbage. And then they opened up a case on me. I didn't abandon the children. It didn't matter. He was gone. I was the only one to point a finger at. They opened up a case on me, and then 4 months later served me with petition of termination of parental rights. The entire time, it felt like everyone was against me. The entire time, it felt like the decision to not reunify my family was already made. I'll never know. From the very beginning, I could sense that there was something wrong with this agency. Things weren't right. But I didn't make a big deal about it because I had a court-appointed attorney. Well, I didn't know until it was too late that my court-appointed attorney was not on my side. My court-appointed attorney didn't submit evidence, didn't notify me of my rights, didn't fight for me, didn't call witnesses, didn't do anything. Well, I take that back. What my attorney did do was the morning of my termination of parental rights trial, we're in court. Everyone states their name, and my attorney calls for a recess. Takes me into the hallway and coerces me under extreme duress in that hallway for 30 minutes to surrender my rights. Told me if I loved my children, I would do it. Told me she didn't have a closing argument. I was under duress. I was coerced. Giving up on my children, not one single time ever crossed my mind. The hallway was spinning. I didn't see any choice. She didn't present any other choices to me. It was a horrible, horrible experience situation. And I walked in the courtroom and nodded my head to the garbage coming out of her mouth. So my rights were terminated August 2022. So who I used to be a mom. I went to college. My degree was in psychology, and so my bachelor's is in psychology. I went back and did graduate work for elementary ed, but my desire, I felt my purpose in life was to be a mother. And so at the time when CPS got involved, I was parenting my 4 children with my fiance, and he was abusive. And I finally called the police, 911, one night, and that was my way of saying no more. The police had been involved before, but I was never the one that called 911. I know what the neighbors did, and my dad did one time. I was a good person. I was very quiet. I very sheltered, lived a sheltered life. I'm the only child, only grandchild. Just a very family-oriented person. Never had been in trouble with the law, and was content, fulfilled, being a stay-at-home mom. Some days were harder, but I just would reach out to friends who had children and were at home, or my parents, or we'd go to the park. And I'm social. I like meeting new people. And so my partner, my ex, he was rarely there for me. He would go to work and then come home and change and then go out with his friends, which used to make me crazy. But that was the dynamics of our relationship that I was very unhappy in. When I left him, it was the scariest thing to this day ever done. I was terrified. But I knew I was doing the right thing. Our oldest child had just started kindergarten, and that was my wake-up call, that the abuse had to stop, that my children didn't deserve to be raised in that kind of environment, and that even though I've always been a good mom, I would be an even better mom if I didn't have the strain and chaos from my toxic, abusive relationship. So that's who I was. Now, today, I'm very proud to say that you will never catch me in an abusive relationship. No man will ever put his hands on me again. I have been homeless since leaving him. That's a real eye-opener. I've seen a lot of things that, I never experienced in my sheltered life. And I've seen a lot of bad things, but I always look for the good in the bad. And so I learned a lot of lessons, and I'm definitely stronger and wiser. So the next question, the main question is usually, why did CPS get involved? CPS got involved because my ex started a spite case with false allegations to use our children as weapons to hurt me. He called CPS abuse hotline 16 times in a 6-month period. And every time an investigator would come out, talk with me and the children, come in the home, close the investigation, allegations unsupported, no services needed. And then the 16th time, that was different. So I'll share with you that story. So that is an overview of my CPS story. How did it change me? I wrote something and I want to share it with you. Going through what I went through, it broke every illusion I ever had. It forced me to grow in ways I never asked for. It stretched my soul in ways I would never have imagined. And it took me to a level of emotional and spiritual strength I didn't know existed inside me. I became more aware, more awake, more grounded, more resilient, more connected to God, and more connected to myself. I had to learn how to stand on my own 2 feet, and I had to learn how to find hope when nothing in my reality gave me a reason to be hopeful. I had to learn how to breathe again, even when I didn't want to. And what changed me the most? My situation didn't change me. I'm sorry. And what changed me the most, because my situation never changed. I didn't get my kids back. I didn't get answers. I didn't get justice. I didn't get closure. But I got myself. I got me. And that's the part of the story that matters the most.